Welcome to our podcast, Parenting by the Pint. Enjoy the show.
Greetings, Minivan Mafia. Lauren and I are longtime friends from Chicagoland that love getting together to chat about life, kids, family, and beer.
Each week, we'll feature a brewery and sample at least 2 of their beers.
We'll also discuss a variety of topics ranging from parenting, pop culture, travel, marriage, and just about anything else that comes to mind.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everyone. So, as I have said many times in the last couple of months, we are just in chaos. And I appreciate your patience with us because, this is not how we like to do things. We do not like to improvise. We like to have a plan. Lauren and I will speak at length at some point about how much we enjoy planning things out. And this is included in that. It's not just like vacations. It's everything.
We plan everything. Yes.
Yeah. But this plan just got thrown into upheaval too many times. And so here we are. I'm going to be completely straight with you. We're recording over Zoom. We are drinking different things, but with a purpose. And that is what we're going to do this time. And hopefully we're a little bit, chaos is less, involved in the future episodes, but this just might come up once in a while where we're going to sample something lovely in our refrigerators.
We'll get back on track eventually, but it's been,
yes.
Yeah, we've been all over the place, but yes. So we grabbed stuff from our fridges and that's what we're going to drink. So Karen, what you got?
I am drinking Lagunitas A Little Something Something, which is something that is always in my refrigerator or very often in my refrigerator. The reason is that it is a universally appreciated beer among my family members and people who have come over as guests. So this got put into my refrigerator before the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And because my brother drinks it. And I will also drink it and I enjoy it. And it's the type of beer that I will kind of sit and enjoy while making some dinner or while we're watching something. It is a little on the stronger side at 7.5%. So it's not super crushable, but it is for someone like me.
Yeah, no, totally. I was gonna say, I feel like it walks that line that it totally is. But
it does.
Yeah.
Way back when I first started drinking a little something, something, like if I ordered it out at a restaurant,
like it was a little,
if I would have ordered a second one, I would have been like, that was too much.
Fair.
But now I could probably handle 2 out at a restaurant with a big meal and be all right. But as a general rule, I tend to do these one at a time. So that's what I'm gonna hit today. What about you, Lauren? What do you got?
I am drinking something the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So I am drinking a Stiegl Radler. So Stiegl is an Austrian brewery. They're actually the largest private brewery in Austria, and they're family owned and have been around since the 1400s. So maybe we'll highlight them at some point. Mozart drank there back in the 1780s. His
that's cool.
sister wrote in her journal that they went to the brewery in August of that year. Cool. So it's an interesting place. But the reason that I'm drinking it, and it's a Radler, so I think the Radler's always interesting. So Radler's, it's essentially like beer mixed with something, and it started out back in the 1920s in Bavarian countryside somewhere. And the story goes there were a group of cyclists going through, and they were parched and needed a beer, and he realized that he didn't have enough beer for everyone, so he mixed his beer with lemonade, and that's where the Radler started. So you can get it with all different flavors and things. It's usually some sort of syrup, kind of similar to like a Berliner Weiss at times, depending. But this one's grapefruit that I'm drinking. I also have raspberry in my fridge. But the reason I always have these is because it is the only beer that my husband will drink. Like the only.
Well, that's a good reason. And I would like to note that Radlers are very widely available at Oktoberfest in Germany.
That makes sense.
It is, from what I understand, although it is not an experience I have yet had, it is.
But then I could bring him with us.
Yes, yes. It is the beer you drink when you've had too much beer because it's very low alcohol.
It's light,
so
exactly.
It's basically like a water middle ground, which it isn't, but it is.
It's flavored. It's a little bit, but so that is why I always have this in my fridge, because it is something that my husband will drink. So I like to have something that we can both drink, and it's light. And I always have them in the summer because they usually do have a different kind of citrusy flavor to them.
Sure.
Lots of different, even local breweries. I saw a blood orange Radler the other day at the bottle shop. So there's different breweries, but this is the one that we tend to buy is Stiegl, and I knew nothing about them until I kind of just Googled them to talk about it. And then I was like, oh, they're actually interesting. So
yeah, we'll have to touch on that. I'm open-minded to Radlers,
so we
back
can to it.
Well, and I believe that we talked at one point about trying to revisit Lagunitas even as well. We did feature them when we talked to Jeremy and we drank the hard tea. But, Lagunitas definitely deserves a little bit of our attention again at some point. So we'll revisit both of these places, I would guess, in the not too distant future.
I agree. What I also thought was interesting, which I don't think I know what the drinking age in Austria is, but when I went to their website, it said, "Are you over the age of 16?" And I was like, that's awesome. Anyways, I was like, okay, definitely. I like them. So
great.
But so that's what I'm going to be sipping on today as we chat. We'll be drinking my Radler. So
love it. I love it. And I will keep working on this little something, but just one.
No.
So we're gonna talk about something that I have been contemplating for a very long time as a topic, and have sort of been working on thoughts over that length of time, and has really become much more relevant, I think, in the last, let's say, month, but longer than that, definitely. But
in this year, even just since
let's say 2024. But obviously, this is always relevant. We're going to talk about women in media and film. And I have a lot to say on the subject, and I don't want to Tarantino it too much, but I will say that I'd like to end our conversation with Taylor Swift going to football games, and we'll get there because I do
eventually get there eventually.
And it is kind of if you are a storyteller, it is kind of the inciting incident to us bringing this topic to the podcast finally.
It reminded us of the conversation that likely has been brewing for a bit. So
yeah. So for me, what it really boils down to when it comes to fiction, which is obviously not what Taylor Swift is about, but when it comes to fiction, movies and television shows, and is how they portray women, even when they're not the primary main character in the story. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I'm not going to die on the hill that women need to be the main character more often. That's not necessarily what I feel strongly about. Although there are people who do. On both sides of that argument.
I'm not one of those people. Yeah.
What really sticks with me is times where I feel bothered by the role of women in a film or a television show, and times where I feel like they're using the role of a woman character to my satisfaction. I won't even say properly, because I don't want to speak for everyone. That's
not necessarily
the point.
Proper, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the rundown. Let's start with my gripes. What's grinding my gears about the whole thing?
All right.
So the first example I would like to bring up is the first Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot, which is I don't know, a handful of years old now, a good handful of years old.
A bit ago, but yeah.
people loved this movie. People liked the story. They liked her as Wonder Woman. They thought she was powerful, and that's whole Wonder Woman's thing and all this stuff. And on my initial watch of the film, I kind of felt the same way. I was just like, yeah, she's a fighter and she's going to battle, and and it's a nice representation of women, and I like those things. And then at some point I rewatched the film and I noticed a couple of things. And these couple of things just kind of kill this movie for me. And I'll give two examples, and then I don't want to dwell too long because I want you to share some input on some stuff that you have thoughts on as well, of course. The very first thing that she does when she shows up in our world, because she's coming from this mythical island, right? When she shows up in our world, the very first thing that happens, she's walking down the street and she sees a baby. And she's just like, oh my gosh, a baby. And she wants to pick up and hold the baby. Yeah, and I'm just kind of like,
no.
What? Yeah. Now, one can argue that she did that because she's never seen a baby before, because there aren't babies on the island where she lives, right? True. So maybe she's just fascinated by seeing a tiny human. They don't really write it that way. It doesn't really seem acted out that way.
It feels like it's the female in her.
It's a maternal thing.
Stereotypical
it comes off as
maternal instinct.
Yeah, it comes off as I want a baby, not that's a tiny human. I've never seen one of those. And I just, I don't love that. Let's not do that. She didn't need to. She could have been weirded out, which does happen if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie. Rocket, the raccoon, is weirded out by a toddler. And he's just like, what's with that tiny human? Why can't he walk by himself? And I'm like, see, now he has never seen
and we understand that that is why the reaction. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's just kind of a, side by side. Then the other thing that happens in Wonder Woman that really bothers me, it's not even the love story. It's okay. She can fall in love.
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But they do this whole montage where she tries on different outfits.
Oh my god.
Like she gets dressed up so that they can make her look more like a lady.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That's not. And that has nothing to do with being Wonder Woman.
Put her in an army uniform and be done with it.
Yeah.
She's going to battle. Why are we doing this?
Always the interesting is how women, to me, are dressed even when they are in the same general role, job, things like that as men, even in sports. So you see women broadcasters, they are dressed much more scantily clad typically than a full-on suit that their male counterparts
Well, and there's commentary about it. I have a friend. Totally. This actually just happened yesterday, which makes me almost glad that we got stuck waiting to talk about this. But I have a friend who is in broadcast journalism, and she got a haircut, and it's shorter. Not like crazy, super short, but much shorter than her hair was before. And I commented on it. I was like, oh, wow, you got a haircut. It looks really good. It's really short. Yeah. And in hindsight, this was one of those moments where I maybe said too many things about it.
Fair, okay.
Because I do that. I don't know why. It was nothing negative. I just said too many things in a row about the haircut.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, shut up. But she was like, oh yeah, I really like it and it's great and it's easy to style and things like that. And she's like, I was really concerned that viewers were going to have an opinion on it. And she commented that she did get a couple of emails, but they were complimentary. And I was sort of like, okay,
positive. That's good.
That's good. But still, they commented on your haircut. And I sort of feel like this just makes me... I don't think
that would happen with men.
I just want to start writing emails to men in the media.
Mustache needs to be trimmed. What about that hair?
Really? A dark blue tie with a light blue suit? I mean, if you're going to contrast, that's not a bad way to go. But then you wore a green shirt. I almost got sick looking at it. And I just want to go off the deep end.
Put that commentary. I do like that. I like that.
Counterbalance things.
Yeah, you need a little bit of both. I get it. I read a few I guess fun facts, not necessarily fun, but so I was reading about just women in industries. And so when it comes to overall directors, writers, producers, editors, all of those things in like the top 300 grossing films of last year, women accounted for only 22% of that population. That's actually down from previous years. So
Wow.
we're actually doing worse in certain aspects of populations, and women's speaking roles only accounted for 37% of speaking characters in last year. So whereas 80% of films feature more male overall, more just male characters than female. So you're seeing more men everywhere pretty much than you are women in every in a speaking role, just in characters in general, behind the scenes, you're still seeing a significant difference in that pretty much everywhere. So, yeah, still got some work to do
Well,
on
and
some of that.
people often argue that like you want the best and the most creative and the blah blah
Sure,
blah.
I
And
get
then
it.
you counter that argument though with saying that you have to give a wide range of individuals a voice in order
Mm,
to really cover everything that's going on in the world. And there are the people who believe the best is all that matters that would say, well, that's not reasonable because you want things to be the best. I don't think they can be the best without
mhm.
you adequately getting the voice of everyone. And I'm not
Lots of
just
different
talking about
people.
women. There
Oh,
are
no.
plenty of
Yeah.
other categories of individuals that deserve to be represented in this way. And I
Mhm.
find it amazing when I read an article about, let's say, for example, War Machine, Colonel Rhodes from Iron Man movies,
Oh,
where he ends
yeah.
up being disabled. And there are articles and blogs and videos where people talk about how comforting it was to them to finally feel represented in a
Yes. Oh,
superhero
yeah.
film. And as someone who doesn't fall into that category, the thought had not crossed my mind.
Yep.
And I realized that's a big deal. It's a big deal to have your voice heard in the thing you're watching on TV or on the movie
Oh,
screen.
yeah. And I get that now there's a lot more pushes. I'm sure we could have had the same conversation or can have the same conversation for, race or religion or all kinds of different demographics that aren't considered. I think it's so many things. There's a ratio of, almost 2.5 almost to 1 male actors versus female actors, just in general in the population. So but that's, partially because historically there were fewer female actors coming up through the ranks. I don't know what that
Yeah.
divide is by age, just by population. The other thing that's interesting is how they're portrayed. So like you're saying, appearance, hair. There was a thing back in I think 2018, 2019 that took the top 900 films for the last like 15 years or something. And 25.6% of women actors got partially naked or revealed clothing as opposed to less than 9% of men. So women are significantly showing more skin, being more revealing than men across the board, regardless of, race, but just in terms of female versus male.
Right.
So, like those type of things, and I know there's been more women who are refusing to do some of those things and speaking out about it, but there's still those statistics that we're selling sex still, like when it comes
Well,
to
and
women.
the women who are coming out against this are already in a position of power.
Correct. You
The
can't do it
women
unless you're still going to get a role if you say no.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
women who, many, many women may be against it, but the only ones who are able to actually advocate against it are going to be ones that are already secure.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate. I appreciate that, and that's great. And those women should continue doing
Sure.
what they're doing
But that
because you
population
are
is
powerful and you
small.
should keep using that power to your advantage. That's the whole point. That's what we're all trying to do here, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yep. Agreed. Yeah.
I do think that there are times where you watch a film where it's heavy-handed, the like woman
Mm.
power. I'm gonna bring up
Sure.
Marvel Endgame, where there's that scene in the
With
battle
all
where
the
all the
females.
women
Yep.
get together and they do this like really awkward, weird, like we've got this, and then they all march together.
And it very
I
clearly was like women power on purpose. Like Whereas I would have actually felt more comfortable if it was just everybody. Like the whole women thing didn't do it for me as a woman.
Well, and I mean, to dive a little deep into the like MCU Marvel universe, they've already told us that Captain Marvel is basically the most powerful character.
Right.
You don't need to do more than that. It's a woman.
We're
You
good.
made it a woman, and she's super powerful, and she shows up, and everything, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
In that fight, that's it. That's the women power movement.
You don't need to
you don't have to do more.
Power it, and yeah, exactly. We're good.
Yeah. So,
agreed.
I don't like the heavy-handed, like I'm a strong woman roar. That's just pandering. I don't like that.
Yeah, we
I don't
want to
know.
be equal. We don't want to be we don't want it to be just about us.
Well,
Like
nobody is appreciating that, because men who are
Right.
against women becoming more powerful see
Yeah.
that and they're upset about it.
Right.
And women who are arguing that we should be shown as more powerful
Mhm.
they're like, not like that though. And
Right.
there's nobody that's like, I mean, that feels like that is the moment that they want. That's not the moment,
Yeah. Nobody wants that
So
moment. I don't. Yeah, I
that all
agree.
being said, there are a lot of times where I feel like female characters in TV shows and movies are going the right way and are doing the
Mhm.
things that satisfy me as a female viewer. I have mentioned this before, but there is a movie called Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. Pretty much everything she's in, by the way, is kind of
It's
that. I
top
think
notch.
that's her
Yeah.
thing, which I
Probably.
love.
I can see that. Yeah.
She also made a movie that's on Netflix that's called The Old Guard, where men and women
Oh,
in the film, it's a pretty good movie. It's a kind of superhero-esque.
okay.
There are men and women characters in that movie that are the main characters, and there's very little like pointing out differences in gender. That
Okay.
does not happen in that film.
Interesting.
That's not. And
Okay.
I feel like she has a big part in refocusing the film to focus on story and character development and things like that.
Huh.
And it goes very well. Atomic Blonde is another really good example of that. She's basically like a James Bond
Okay.
character.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it's an action film, so some
Hmm.
people would argue that that's very counter, the female roles they've seen, and obviously that's what I like about it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think even if you think it's to the extreme, which at times maybe it is, I think it's balancing, it's
It's
tipping the
counter what the
scale.
ones that already
Yeah.
exist that are male gender focused. It's interesting. I do think that we're going in the right direction. I think that a lot of that is partially because women writers are becoming more and more as well. Because if you look at the statistics, the number of protagonists that are women, if a female writer or director is part of it, it's 56%. If a male is writing it, it's 23%.
Oh,
So
wow.
a lot of that is the women writing women in versus when a male is the one writing it, typically the main character is only a woman 36% of the time, or a combination of main characters. Usually there's more than one. But if a woman writer is doing it, it's closer to 50% or 47% that the main characters include a woman. So as more women are part of the writing and directing and behind the scenes, it seems like they're pulling more women with them, which I
Right.
think is what we're seeing more of in our generation, which is great. But it's definitely you could definitely see that there is still, some old boys club things, and that's across the board. But, I think that in movies and things like that, it is more than in things like the news still. So like we
Mm-hmm.
women are more, we are consuming a lot more TV shows and movies and things like that. So I think that they're pushing for more women in that. I think that people who watch news or read news or watch things like that often still are the demographic that are more male because do you watch local news right now? Do you
No.
even have local news? Like we
No.
don't even
I had
have
to sign
cable.
up for Paramount
Like,
Plus to watch the Super
to
Bowl.
get
I
the
don't
Super
even
Bowl,
have
right.
cable.
So women as expert news sources are still only 20% of expert news sources. So while we have more representation in film and things like that, when it comes to television, newspaper, radio, we are the expert sources in only 20%. And even overall, the people in newspaper, television, and radio, women only make up 24% of that
Ooh.
population. So we're still significantly less in the news source realm than we are in the entertainment realm. So while
That
partially
is
we're getting
unpleasant.
there, we're still significantly behind when it comes to actual like news media, you know? So there's still a large disparity there, which I think is interesting.
Yes.
So we're not making nearly as much progress in that area as in others.
That's rough, man.
Mhm. I
Well,
thought so. Yeah.
so we've kind of done some ups and downs here. I've mentioned some
Yeah.
specific examples. I want to kind of, get a little closer to our normal topic and talk about
Yeah.
something that is a good example of man and woman parenting children in concert with each other
Yeah.
and in media. And I don't know if this is going to take you by surprise or not. I'm going to mention Bluey. I don't know if you've ever watched Bluey. If you haven't,
Australia.
if you haven't watched Bluey, I don't care how old your kids are. Anybody listening to this, watch 5 episodes. They're 8 minutes long. Okay.
Oh my God, they're super short. I've actually never watched it. I've seen like memes about it. I've seen about it,
I'm
but
sure
I've
you
never
have.
watched
It's very
an episode.
popular.
Yeah, it's super popular.
You should watch it. Your
Okay.
kids will love it. My kids love it, and they're 12 and almost 10. My kids love it.
Okay.
If I went upstairs right now and was like, let's watch Bluey, we would watch an hour worth of episodes. And we've seen all of them.
Sure. Okay.
So,
all right. So tell me about Bluey.
This show, the mother and the father in the show, over time you realize, what their professions are and what their roles in the home are and things like that. And it is very, very balanced. Mom and dad are equal partners in every aspect of parenting and managing the home and doing their jobs and relationships with family, with outside the home, neighbors, friends, relatives, everything. It is just a perfectly balanced example of what it's almost like a utopia. It's almost too perfect. You're almost like, well, you can't do everything. You can't share everything. You can't be wonderful every second of the day. And you just have to remind yourself, if this was a real family and you were watching a real family, this is only 8 minutes of their day.
True.
Everybody's got 8 really gold minutes. You can be gold for 8 minutes
for 8 minutes.
Indulge your children.
That's fair. Yes.
You might have 28 minutes of yelling at them to put their shoes on.
There's 8 solid positive minutes in your day somewhere.
It's just, it's just very, very well put together, very well presented. I'm sure there is criticism about the father character on the show and how maybe he's being emasculated. I don't know why anyone would say that if they truly appreciated the message that the show is trying to convey, which is that this is a family that loves their children and is trying to make every moment count and enjoy their lives together and be as committed to each other as possible. It's a wonderful story. This family just is great. Their kids are very typical in the sense that, like, sometimes they have a meltdown and sometimes they're enjoying themselves and laughing and screaming, and sometimes the siblings aren't getting along, and sometimes
normal family interactions.
Yes. Sometimes somebody crosses the line and someone gets hurt, and emotionally or physically, like, and all of those things happen, which just makes it even better because it makes you relate to it even more.
I read an article, just a small side note, but I read an article because somehow I must hit an algorithm somewhere and it popped up about how moms appreciate Bluey because their house isn't always clean. The car isn't always immaculate. There's
the
French fries and
atrocious. It's
got fries and food and everything everywhere, and it's like this is more realistic than a lot of other kid, friendly shows, especially animation, that they actually go through and it's like, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. Like there's things out of
Yes.
place. Like they want people to be able to relate to it in multiple different ways. So, anyways, continue. Again, I've never
Yes.
watched the show. I've only
Yes.
seen
I
random pieces of things. Yeah.
let's call this the new Kara is going to die on this hill for Ted Lasso. It used to be Ted Lasso. Now I'm going to die on the hill of
All
Bluey
right.
because
All right.
everyone should watch like 5 episodes, any 5. Go on Disney
Okay.
Plus, pick whichever ones you want.
Okay.
The other thing I really appreciate about the show, and this is something you might not notice until you get into it a little bit,
Okay.
and 5 episodes might be enough. I don't remember what the first 5 are. It does tackle some serious subjects. It talks about, one parent hasn't spoken to a sibling in several years, and it
Okay.
talks about infertility, and it talks about having a baby, and it talks about loss, losing a parent, and it covers a lot, of emotional subjects that will affect, in my opinion, adults more than the kids. I think my kids pick up on a lot because they are a little bit older, which is why I argue that older kids would enjoy the show.
Enjoy it, and they would still benefit from it if they have some of those themes that they would pay attention to or not go over their heads. So
yes.
Okay.
So I like that too, because every once in a while, and it's not every single episode, but every once in a while there's an episode that tackles a subject that's a little deeper than you realize on your initial watch.
Sure. Okay.
Or you maybe realize it later, or you're thinking about, well, why did she get upset at this moment? Why did mom get upset at this moment? And you kind of realize later, well, it's because she was remembering this thing that happened to her, or this difficult relationship that she had, or whatever. And it is very enjoyable because you relate to the show in that way too.
Yeah.
So
I will have to
off of the women, although there are women's issues that come up. I mean, I mentioned infertility. They discuss infertility at some point in an episode. And so there are some of that, and it's very comforting to kind of see that in this cartoon and allow children to start to appreciate that even when they're young. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So
understand some of those things, especially with our kids' ages. Like I feel like they know a lot more. There's just more issues that they're aware of now. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So yes, it's on Disney Plus. I will tell you there is one episode that is not on Disney Plus that's banned.
Okay. I feel like I've read about this. Yeah.
It's about childbirth. It's an episode about childbirth, and American censors felt that it was a little too graphic. I obtained the episode and watched it, and then watched it I pre-watched it myself and then watched it with
to make sure it's appropriate for the kids. Yeah.
I don't really think that it's inappropriate. It does definitely give you a decent base of how childbirth actually works. What's sort of actually happening without anything actually happening. You know what I mean?
So it's not like they're not like throwing it in your face. They're just part of.
I mean, even the children that are the characters on the show are like 5 and 7. They're really little. So like the story and the actual like act of what goes on in the episode really just kind of gives you like a baby comes out of a person.
Gotcha.
And it's just a little bit more like explanatory than we tend to be with young children.
I feel like we should be explanatory, but that's just my 2 cents.
I watched it and expected to be horrified.
Right. And you were like,
I was like, why isn't this on Disney Plus? And then I watched it and I was like, nah. I mean, it definitely is about childbirth, but it is not inappropriate at all. And that is probably the most borderline episode that there is in the show.
Yeah.
If you want to argue that anything is borderline, and I wouldn't.
Interesting. I will have to check it out.
So try Bluey. I really recommend it.
I will try Bluey. My kids actually made a comment the other day. They watch the same TV over and over and
Yeah,
over again.
my kids do that.
And but this was actually probably about a month ago because we were still in the end of Christmas movies. But we had watched the Christmas Chronicles, and then my twins have watched all of Fuller House.
Okay.
And they commented that both of them have single moms, but they haven't seen any shows with a single dad. And I was like, they exist. Like, there's just more of them that have shows with
Yeah,
a
that's
mom
interesting.
than with a dad. And they were the ones that pointed it out. They're like, well, and they understood like the story of what happened to the father. Ironically, they were both firemen who died in fires, which is weird.
Yikes.
But also not great.
I don't like
my
that at
husband is a
all.
fireman, so not fantastic. But they were like, "What about single dads? Do those exist?" And I was like, "Yes, single dads totally
Yeah,
exist."
moms
But
just don't die in
there's
fires because we're
yeah,
not about to go in there. No.
yeah. But I mean, some do. But yeah, and then
Yes,
of
I
course,
know, I know.
my daughter's godmother's a firefighter. So,
Yes, I am not fighting
but
against
I
the
was
cause,
like,
ladies and gentlemen.
oh no, not at all. But I was like, I can't like immediately think of a recent show or movie that was a single dad. I'm sure they exist, but it's not something that was just immediately coming to mind. And I was like, huh, yeah, I'm sure they're out there. There's probably more two dads and two moms and weird like
Yeah.
different combinations than there are single dads though, shows, movies, things like that I've seen in a while. And I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that there hasn't been one in recent times that I've watched.
Have you ever
So,
seen that show 2.5 Men?
yes. I
Is
didn't
that a
like
single
that show.
dad show? I've never watched it, but from what I briefly, is it a dad and a son? Is two of
It's
the
dad and son
characters?
and uncle, yes.
Okay.
I mean the mom is in the show.
Okay.
But
Okay. I've never watched it. It just
actually
popped into my brain.
that's actually like a more of a negative portrayal of males though than it is a positive.
Yes, I realized that bringing it up had that
But
potential because
yes,
I know the characters on the show. I did not watch the show,
yeah.
but I know kind
I
of the
didn't
premise
watch it
is not
regularly, but I
super
have
positive.
seen episodes. But yeah, so the one that I've seen isn't the best scenario for the kid, even.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
So
bummer.
we need some more positive of
We'll have to
that.
work on that.
But
Let's find
yeah,
some single dad shows that are really good.
I think I'm going to. Um, before we hop on to the current media things and whatnot, as I was looking into some of these things, I found something that the BBC actually put out there a few years ago and then kind of pulled in people recently. So they started something called the 50/50 Project. And their
Okay.
goal is to have organizations join to monitor the contributions and the gender equality of contributions on their networks. And it started with just the BBC. And so they've now partnered with over 145 different organizations that have committed to reporting on different gender contributions in their companies, in their, whether they're news networks, whether they're corporations, whether they're whatever, but to have that actually monitored and reported on their progress to getting to 50/50.
That's
And
interesting.
across 30 different countries. I don't believe there's any in the US that have signed on for this, but they're all across Europe, Canada, I mean, South Africa, South America, like all over, China even. Like, I mean, there's 30 different countries and 145 organizations that have committed. Not that there's no enforcement of it, but they're just trying to report that we are trying to be better about this. And it's holding them accountable because they are sending in data, and the BBC is actually putting out reports that says here's the percentage of companies that have improved, that haven't changed, that have actually decreased. Like, here's some metrics. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It's totally voluntary. Again, there's nothing that says you have to, but I think it's great that there's 145 companies that are like, we recognize and want to improve on this. Like, and I'm saddened that not many in America
Yeah,
seen
I mean,
her
obviously,
doing
I had
it.
no idea.
So
So
yeah, I thought it was
that
really, I
is
thought it was
very
interesting,
interesting.
and it was
Hopefully, it's kind of just guiding us the right direction. If nothing else,
exactly, yeah,
it's a motivator.
yeah, and that's increased over. It's 10 more countries, and I think it started with just the UK, and then it's grown. I think it started back in like 2019, and it's really hasn't been around for that long. But even in 4 years, 5 years, it's grown significantly, and it shows that there's a recognizing, recognition that this is an area that needs improvement. So I think that that's great.
Yeah,
To at least
that's
see
good.
that there are companies that are like, okay, we want to do better. This isn't a requirement, but it's something that we want to do.
Hmm.
So I thought that that was kind of a cool just movement that had
Yeah,
started. So
that's really interesting.
there's my 2 cents on that.
Well, let's just hope for progress. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So this all came about
This
mostly
all
because
came about,
recent
this
media.
topic came to the forefront for Lauren and I because of Taylor Swift going to football games
Yeah, yeah.
and the extremely diverse reaction to that. I have some
Yes.
thoughts that I'm going to start out by saying it is known by you and by probably anyone who's listened to more than 2 episodes of this podcast that I watch professional football.
Hmm.
I mention it every so often.
Yeah, it comes
It
up
is
'cause it
something,
happens.
yeah, yeah. I have been watching professional football. I'm not going to tell you I've watched my entire life because that would be a lie. When I went away to college, I went to University of Illinois with the lovely Lauren,
Yes.
and we had season tickets to college football games
Yep.
at Memorial Stadium, and I very much enjoyed watching college football.
Hmm.
As I
Same.
graduated, I was at that point dating my husband, who was a Green Bay Packers fan, which is kind of counterintuitive because I grew up in a suburb of
Uh,
Chicago. And although no one in my family was super passionate about the Bears, I was in an environment of mostly Bears fans.
fair. Yeah.
When Mike and I moved in together, he was watching Packers football, and I basically just started watching with him. It was something he was doing, and he was interested in it, and it was a 3-hour activity on a Sunday, something we could
Yeah.
do together. It did coincide with the Packers being very good,
Good at that
which
time, for sure.
definitely
Yeah.
helps.
It
Taylor can tell
definitely.
you that
Yeah.
when your team is doing well, it's a lot easier to watch, and she's
True,
right.
true. Yep, yep. Not even
Nobody.
for the Chiefs, for the Eagles. She was an Eagles fan
Yes.
for
Yes. Yeah. Ooh, we can talk about that if we want. But
anyways.
so I bring up this story and I tell this story because I was inspired to watch football because my husband watched football.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, I she decided to start actively going to football games because her boyfriend was playing in the games, and we're all shocked and shaken about it for some reason.
which
I'm
doesn't
not fully
really,
sure I understand why.
right? Yeah.
This guy, Travis Kelce, goes to her concert over the summer. They end up meeting and they get together and they start dating. And then during his off week during the season, he flies to Argentina and watches her
Yeah.
concert. That's called being a supportive significant
other. Exactly.
I don't
Yeah.
really see the problem there.
Yeah.
I've noticed a couple of things have come out. First of all, there's a lot of jokes being made about wives and daughters and girlfriends, and what they're usually doing on Sundays while husbands are watching football, and how it's like, oh, she won't leave me alone and she's bugging me, or she's watching for the
Uh,
wrong reason, or I never liked that argument. I have always
no.
felt as a female football fan that
Mhm.
I'm supposed to just I generally do not share my opinion about the
Yeah.
specifics of being a football fan. I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
sit here and talk to you about what's going to happen in the off season. Who are we going to trade? Who are we going to drop?
Oh, especially
Who's
right
in free
now. Yeah.
agency? Who do I want us to draft? What positions are of need? I'm not going
Yep.
to talk to you about all that stuff because 9 times out of 10, if I'm talking to a man,
They're gonna
they're
tell
not
me
going to be
I'm
respectful of
wrong.
my
Yep.
opinion
Totally agreed.
because they
Yep.
already have this notion that as a woman, I'm not there to actually
I don't know what
care
I'm
and learn
talking
about the
about.
sport.
Yeah. Agreed.
Irrelevant.
But
But
it is a stereotype.
that joke has been popping up even more, in my opinion, with this whole
Mhm.
craze with women starting to become more interested, women and young women,
Mhm.
becoming more
Yep.
interested in football.
Yeah.
They're watching because someone they look up to is watching, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
bad.
understand how it's a bad thing. Yeah.
You're upset that your wife or daughter or girlfriend or girlfriend's daughter is watching the game with you because they're not doing it for what you consider the right reason. What's the right reason to start watching professional football? You didn't play the sport. You probably as a man didn't play the sport.
Yeah, exactly.
And playing when you were a kid or even
does
in high
not
school
count.
does not
I
count.
used
We
to
can
play
all do
flag
that.
football at the park. Like
Yeah,
that doesn't.
don't even
Yeah.
start with me.
And
Nobody
in our
believes that's
household,
real.
yeah, in our household, I'm more likely to watch football than my husband is. He's just not, he's never really been a football fan. Like, I've been to more NFL games than he has. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if he's ever been to an NFL game, but I have with a girlfriend, mind you,
Yeah.
not even with like a male, with another female.
It is perfectly fine if the primary demographic of football watchers just happen to be men. I respect that. But what are you doing? Why are you pushing us away? What is the purpose of that? You want to keep it to yourselves? Because guess what? We are having your children and we are not encouraging them to watch football because you're not watching with us. So if you keep this up, football will die someday when nobody watches it.
Yeah, if we want to do it as a, group thing, a family thing, I mean, like viewership, obviously, and this isn't the normal target demographic, but of teenage girls increased 55%, like because
55%.
Like
that is shocking. It's a shockingly high number.
The thing is that in doing that, not only are they just watching, the reason they started watching is to see someone they look up to. But in doing that, they're also learning more about the sport. They're seeing more things. They're exposing themselves to different things. All of that isn't bad either. My daughter knows more about football now than she has in the past, and that's not a bad thing either, to just understand the sport.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that.
A problem? Is that a big deal?
And then seeing, Taylor up on the screen and for the 44 seconds in the in the regular season that she was on, which was like practically nothing because they literally, track all of that. Essentially if you're complaining about that, you're telling your daughter that you shouldn't be supportive of your significant other. Like literally that's all that they're going to get out of it, regardless of how you frame it. If you're complaining about seeing someone support the person they're dating, that's all that kid's going to hear. They're just going to hear that, well, she shouldn't be there for him. Like, but she totally should be there for him. If this was a different, like, if it wasn't as publicized, or if she wasn't as famous. I said when we watched hockey, Carrie Underwood's husband's a hockey player. She's been on there, but it's not as mainstream as this is, and she's not as popular.
Well,
but it happened in the past.
Yes. Well, and I would bring up that so the Packers have a player on the team who's married to Simone Biles, quite possibly the greatest athlete of our generation.
Right.
Okay.
Hugely popular. Yes.
Simone Biles was at every single home football game. And as far as I can recall, the only time they ever showed her was the very first game of the season at home and the game that Taylor Swift was at.
Yeah.
Because she was also at that game.
Yeah.
And they don't show her on the screen all the time. And I'm not here to argue that, well, why not Simone? And they should show everybody. She's a famous person at the game. The NFL
they usually show everybody. More money.
And they do. They show everyone at the Super Bowl. They showed everybody.
Yeah.
So, and if you think I'm over here arguing that they shouldn't be showing Simone Biles, I absolutely am not saying that, because they should show her, and they should be like, look, this woman, she is a professional athlete. She is quite possibly the most talented athlete you will see on TV today, and we are watching a professional football game.
Right. Yeah.
Because she probably is. And she's a woman, and you should look up to her, and you should admire her, and she should be on the screen. And I think that it's good that they're showing Taylor Swift for all of those exact same reasons, because girls look up to her. I will say, with one kind of disclaimer, I have a very strong opinion that famous people and celebrities are not role models. I like Taylor Swift, and she is a powerful woman, and she generally uses her power for positivity.
Sure.
And that's great. But I like to look at female role models in a more localized sense, you know? If you want to talk about strong women, you know, just look around at the people that you know. Like, they're strong women. And I
fair.
do like Taylor Swift. My attitude about her doesn't have to do with her being a powerful woman. It has everything to do with her being a supportive girlfriend.
Yes, agreed. That's really all it comes down to. Is she's there to support him, regardless of what she is independently outside of that. Like, that's why she's there. She's not there to sing. She's turned down the Super Bowl halftime shows for 15 years. Like, she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to be the center of attention. Also that. But well, she'd have to. But it's true.
People who do that are promoting a new album half the time.
Correct.
And that's why they do it for free. So they get a bunch of new fans. Taylor doesn't need it. Doesn't need to do that.
So she doesn't
96,000 at the Melbourne concert.
Yeah, exactly. So she doesn't need to do it. She doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to be the Super Bowl center of attention. She's literally there because of her boyfriend. And that's how I look at it, is she's literally there just to support him. She's not there as a role model for anything else. She's not there supporting herself. She's not there to draw attention. The media is who's drawing attention to it. She's not asking anybody to put her up on the screen.
Well,
like, at all.
Let's kind of change the premise a little bit. If you mentioned that she was an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
What if she just started going to football games? She's not dating anyone. She just decides she wants to start watching football and she wants to be there in person.
Yeah.
Would we be having the same, would everyone else, not you and I, would everyone else be having that same conversation about why are women watching football? Like
I would bet she's been to Eagles games and nobody knew.
Sure.
I would bet.
She has.
That's the thing. This isn't about her being at a stadium. It's about her having a relationship. Like, that's really what this comes down to, because there's famous people at games all the time, and she's been a proclaimed Eagles fan. I guarantee you she's probably been at Eagles games and just nobody put it on the big screen because they weren't focused on it.
Yeah.
Like, so now it's literally because of her relationship. That's it. Like, which shouldn't be a negative, because she's literally just there supporting her relationship.
Yeah, like, it's a very positive thing. It's the same argument we're making for women watching football with you on Sunday. They're there because you like it. They're doing it because you like it. They're motivated.
For our significant others, because of something that they enjoy, and we want to do it with them or for them. Or if your significant other was going to do something where it was on display, whether they were in a sport or they did something or they presented something, you would be there to support them. Famous people do that too.
And isn't the most wonderful possible outcome of that the person grows to enjoy it independently?
Yes,
like me watching football. My husband watched, so I started watching. Now I will forever watch football.
Right,
and
because you
isn't that the best possible outcome? Isn't that what, if you want your daughter and your wife to watch football with you so they'll stop being annoying, quote unquote, on Sundays, isn't it just wonderful that
if they become to like it
continued? Too? Yeah, that you now have something you share with them. Can't you just appreciate that?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that the best thing, where you grow to have a common interest? Like, yeah. I mean, prior to her starting dating Travis, she would be seen in Eagles clothes, like, because she literally is. So, but
that's tricky for me. I'm going to be straight with you. That's a little tricky for me. We have had conversations with my kids about that. Now, neither one of my kids is going to end up being a professional football player. I'm fairly confident of that. I'm
fairly confident
now.
of that too. Yeah.
But we've had the hypothetical conversation, and my husband, it's funny because he'll be like, "Oh, what if Abraham becomes the kicker for like the Cincinnati Bengals? What are you going to do? Are you going to cheer for the Bengals?" And I was like, I mean, are they playing the Packers?
Yeah, you have to cheer for your kid. So
and he's like, but what if they like play against each other in the Super Bowl? Are you going to cheer for the Bengals because your son's on the Bengals? And I went, absolutely not. And my husband was just like mortified. He was just like, how could you do that? You wouldn't cheer for your son to win the Super Bowl if they were playing against the Packers? And I was like, are you really asking me? if I would betray my fandom, which hypothetically, I mean, we're talking about my kid has to be like 20 years older than he is now. So I've been a Green Bay Packer fan for 35 years, and you want me to stop being a Packers fan just because my son happens to be on the other team? I will not do that, not even for one day. No, sir. And he was just like, that's not good. You're not good. And I was just like, fine.
You're like, but I'm honest. But I'm honest.
And I looked at my son in the eyes and I went, I just want you to know. And if you don't want me to come to the game, I will not come. I will stay home and I will watch
my
the Super Bowl on my TV with my Packers jersey on. And if I go to the game and I will not playing against the Packers, I will wear my Packers jersey because I wear my Packers stuff on the Super Bowl. That's what I do, whether they're playing or not.
There you go. Oh, well, we know where you stand. We know where your line is.
Suite, and my son's playing for the team, and I will probably be wearing a Packer shirt. Maybe I would wear a Bengals shirt over it if the Packers aren't playing in the game.
Sure.
But it'll be there.
Yeah. My son doesn't. So ironically, the Bengals are his favorite team.
Yeah,
but Burrow got injured, so he was out, so they had no chance this year. So
that
we'll
was
see.
A huge bummer.
I do think they would have been in contention if we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah.
But anyways, he's a Chiefs fan. Like and this kid is going to be a statistician when he's older. He can tell you every single stat for like every player in the Super Bowl on either team. Like he's crazy like that. So when he gets obsessed with something, he obsesses. But so he's got a Mahomes jersey.
I watched a football game with him. It was pretty overwhelming.
Right? Like he's like everybody. So we had a few people over for Super Bowl. And this has nothing to do with women, but whatever. And then we'll wrap it up. But so there were a bunch of people who don't really watch football regularly, and they watch it just socially. And so two of the people were sitting there, and my son was like, going off statistics, well, this person this person this, and they were both like, we learned so much today. And I was like, yeah, if you watch sports with my kid, that's what happens. Is you learn a lot. But he said, he's like, before the game, he's like, the Chiefs are gonna win because Mahomes is gonna find a way to win, but I think the 49ers deserve to win. And so that was his stance. Was like, I bet you the Chiefs win, Mahomes is gonna find a way to win. Like that's gonna happen. And he's like, but I think the 49ers deserve it. And that's exactly how he walked away from it. Was, this is what's gonna happen. This is what I think, but this is what's gonna happen. And at the end, I was like, that's a
really great take.
You were right, dude.
Like, on. Yeah.
He was on. So and he, of course, knew the overtime rules better than the 49ers did, but that's neither here nor there.
I know. So, right? Well, actually, I listened to the Kelsey Brothers podcast, New Heights, and they talked. This is interesting for your son. Travis actually talked about how there is a member of the coaching staff that is like a statistical analyst that goes through and does calculations for like what is the statistically best thing to do in certain situations. And my youngest has gotten very into statistics as a field of study lately. And I was listening and I was like, oh man, this is a good job for him. And I like, so you should look into that for your son.
So ironically, one of my son's good friends who is in the gifted program with him, his dad is the data analytics director for the White Sox. That's what he does for a living. Like that is his job.
There you go.
So if he ever does interest in that type of work, we know someone who actually
got a little bit of a connection. That's good. Yes.
I don't know him. I've only met him once, but that is what he does for a living, is data analytics. So,
I just thought it was, and again, just my
totally
own ignorance, just like very interesting that there are those roles in professional sports, and how if you're very math oriented and you're very statistical, that this is just a great route, a good avenue for you to go to kind of apply, passion and skill. Without actually kicking the football.
Actually doing the sport. No, agreed. Someday, who knows? We'll see what our kids wind up doing. But for now, we'll continue watching. And I enjoy it. And I enjoyed it before having, Taylor on it. I'm relatively indifferent because I don't actually care about Taylor one way or the other. Like she's a powerhouse and she's made amazing decisions in her career. I think that for that, she is commended. Like, do I care that much about her music? No. Like, it's just I don't have one way or the other. I'm neutral on her as a performer. I think she's a great businesswoman.
Yes.
So she's built her brand, amazingly, and that I think is something to, to be proud of. But I'm indifferent to her in general, so it wouldn't sway me to watch or not to watch. But it's brought a ton of money to the NFL. That's another thing. Like there's so much revenue stream bringing in just because of one singular person that it's amazing. Like more than the actual star athletes can say that they bring in.
Remarkable. It is remarkable.
So, the power that one person has, honestly, is just shocking.
New Heights, the Kelsey Brothers podcast, has been consistently the #1 podcast overall,
which is crazy. Rogan's gonna be
this
mad.
Relationship came about. Like they talk about it, and the best part is Travis. I don't know if you've ever listened to it, but Travis
I have.
is really
I like when they have their mom on. But anyways.
Oh yeah, she's very funny.
Yes.
Travis is very kind of pushes away the subject kind of as much as possible, and it's because I think it's Taylor Swift's preference that he not speak about it too much.
Sure. Yeah.
Otherwise, I think he may actually say more than he does.
Sure.
But he's being respectful. Yeah. Jason doesn't worry about that at all. Jason just kind of says what pops into his brain at any given moment. And every once in a while, they'll bring up the statistics of how the podcast is doing. And they'll be like, well, we were #1 again this year, 2023, best podcast of the year.
Yeah.
And Travis will be like, I just can't believe it. I mean, we're just like a sports podcast. And Jason will literally say, well, it's probably from the Swifties.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
He's 100% right.
Yeah, and Jason totally, he's like saying exactly what it is.
And Travis just goes, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, the Swifties.
Yeah, I forgot. That's exactly why. And Jason's like, duh, man. Like, don't break up with her. We're gonna have no viewership. We're done.
It's just funny to me that the way that they interact when they do touch on the subject is very entertaining. Jason has very positive things to say about Taylor Swift as a woman and as a fan and as a girlfriend to Travis, and all that's
overall.
Great. Yeah. And he is very honest and very outspoken, and I think that if he had issues or concerns,
he probably wouldn't hide it, or he wouldn't talk about them. Like
he would just not bring it up at all.
He wouldn't say positives. I do think that is true. The few times I have listened, he's definitely seems to just say what he thinks. So if he didn't think it, I don't think he would say it. So, but. All right. Well, I'm going to drink the rest of my Radler.
Yes, I'm going to finish off this little something that I'm almost done with.
Yep. See, and I think I'm going to go find a hockey game because that's what sport's on right now. So
I am approaching a time where I need to possibly take my rather sick child to a soccer practice that he probably shouldn't go to. So we're gonna figure out that plan.
Well,
hopefully he's going to skip it so I can put my pajamas on.
We were done with our 3 lacrosse games today, and now we have a lacrosse practice. So that's 4 lacrosses in one day.
Oh man!
Versus the 3 from yesterday. So I'm just looking forward to this winding down at some point. I don't know.
Great. Let's get back to a little smoother.
How about just one a day? One a day I can do, not multiple.
For real.
So yeah. Well, good luck to you, and we will talk again soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone for listening to the latest musings from Parenting by the Pint.
Be sure to find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcasts.
Have a great week, and cheers to you all.